Hi everybody, it's Joey Remenyi here from Seeking Balance International. You can visit me at seekingbalance.com.au. I'm a vestibular audiologist and neuroplasticity therapist, and I help people who are living with chronic, debilitating, persistent vertigo, dizziness, or any type of tinnitus. And one of my favorite parts of my job is meeting people from all around the world and actually witnessing firsthand their recovery process. And today I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to Dawn, who is calling in today from the USA. So welcome to the call, Dawn.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's just a treat. It really is a treat. So thank you for making the time, and thank you for being brave, because there are so many people out there who are just, a bit camera shy or don't like the idea of being on the internet. But I'm really passionate about sharing more positive, productive, helpful recovery stories for people living with these enigmatic symptoms. Both vertigo, dizziness, and tinnitus are all really quite poorly understood. And one of the reasons for that is just because the human body is a miracle. It's so complex. There's so much going on. And, beyond our biology, so all of the little workings of our inner ears and the neurons in our brain and hormones and neurotransmitters, beyond the physical stuff, there's all the invisible world, the emotional, mental, spiritual aspects of being alive. And so the poor old doctors just can't explain it all. And unfortunately, people are often told, live with it, there's nothing you can be done, blah, blah, blah. So do you want to tell us about your journey? I know you had chronic dizziness over a span of, I think, 18 years.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about, what you were feeling before you began the Rocksteady program, before you began Beautiful Balance, before you entered the neuroplasticity healing. Where were you at initially?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a really long time. When I think about it, I had a birthday this week. It's almost half my life that I've been dizzy. So 18 years ago, between my first child and my second child, I woke up one morning out of bed and sat up, and the room was spinning, and I ended up passing out and then threw up everywhere and blah blah blah. It was awful. And then I begged my husband to take me to the emergency room because I figured I was dying. And so we went there, and at the time they just said, we think you have an infection. We're not really sure, it should go away. Well, we went home, and that initial spinning stopped, and I don't think I've ever returned to that. So I still don't know if it was PPPD or something else, but there was that initial episode. But then after somewhere in there too, I had a miscarriage. So there are a couple things going on. And then the vertigo just became, or the dizziness, not quite right, became daily. And so then I started that rabbit trail of seeing all kinds of doctors initially. My primary care first off, and then went to neurologists and had MRIs, and then went to vestibular audiologists and had all the yucky tests that they do that dizzy people hate. And nothing showed up. At that point in time, almost 20 years ago, there was not a lot of info. And the only options really presented to me were I had Meniere's disease, or I had the beginnings of MS, which were ruled out multiple times. And other than that, they just had no answers. And so from there, I tried all kinds of crazy stuff. I tried magnets. I tried visual therapy quite a few times. I did a lot of vestibular rehab. I even entered a bunch of studies at the universities nearby, studying dizzy people and what was, how they could deal. So they put me on these funny wobble boards and connect things to my head and keep track of how dizzy I was. And I spent a lot of time. And in the middle of that, so that was 5 years maybe of really intense looking into it, I also had 2 more kids. And so all of that time was a blur of dizziness and babies, really.
Did you ever? Did you ever actually get further diagnosis down the track as information and technology and everything was kind of dropping into the medical world?
No, so what happened was probably around year 7, we'll say. Um, Someone suggested I go to an upper cervical specialist or a chiropractor that just deals with the upper part of the spine. She said, this is it. This is the answer for you. Well, for whatever reason, that treatment did help. And I had a huge remission for a while. And so then at that point, I thought, okay, I found the answer. This is my problem. It's in my neck. We're all good. Well, so I went for maybe 4 years there. That would be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, for maybe 4 years. And I had relative success with that, enough that I felt like I could live my life. And I stopped seeing her for a while. And then things in life got busy. We added a couple more kids. We have 5. Lots of just kind of traumas within the family went on. And the vertigo started coming back really intense. And then I went back to the chiropractor, and that was no longer helping. And I was going weekly to the point that my neck was starting to hurt a lot. But because I thought that's what had helped, I was scared to stop going. And so I just kept going and going and going. And she just said, well, at least it's helping some, which it stopped. And then I started the whole circle again of doing more vestibular rehab and more vision therapy. And then that leads me to when I found you.
Do you remember how you found me? Was it on YouTube?
I do.
I can't remember.
No, so right around Christmas last year, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, things got really intense, to the worst they had ever been, to the point where I felt like my whole entire day was just centered around how am I going to get through this day and take care of everything I have to get done, not just what I want to do, but have to get done with my dizziness. And that was what I thought of every single morning when I woke up, and it was how I planned my day. And I spent probably 50-60% of the day laying down for a good month or 2.
Yeah. And so by this stage, would you say that you resonated with the PPPD diagnosis?
Yes.
Yeah. So for
and
those...
that I even found on my own too, because I had no doctor even bring that up.
Yeah.
I remember going to my physical therapist and saying, I think this is it. I think this is what I have. And she had never heard of it. Meanwhile, she's giving me all these exercises. And so the one you asked how I found you, during those 2 months was just, my faith is really important to me. And you and I have talked about this a lot during my beautiful balance meetings, but I was just praying and praying and praying for a solution. And one day I like to listen to podcasts because when I was dizzy, I couldn't read and I couldn't often watch TV. So I would listen a lot to a lot of things. So I typed in my podcast thing, vertigo, thinking this is really goofy. Who's going to have a podcast about vertigo? And there you were, and you popped up. And not only did you have like one, but you had lots, and they were long, and they explained everything I've ever felt. And so I felt so encouraged. I felt a little crazy because I'm here in the US and you're across the ocean, but
actually, I remember now when we very first met, and you were like, I feel really silly, like I found you on a podcast, and now I'm talking to you in Australia. Like, is this happening? Like, what? And you were like, I don't want to like make this even more goofy, but I actually prayed to God, and then you popped up.
Yeah,
and I was like, and I really believe in divine timing, because sometimes, and I say this to a lot of my clients and to all of you folks out there listening, we can't rush the process. Like, there are invisible things happening that we are not aware of, and processes that just have to kind of keep rolling. And that's where the spiritual connection piece comes into it. We need to be able to connect to ourselves and trust the process, and connect to the world outside of ourselves, our family, ecology, nature, community. And, there are some things we can't rush. And that can be very painful. You went through a solid 17 years of dizziness, chronic. And I'm sure you remember waking up with dread in the morning and just going, oh my God, I've got to get through another day.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. And that's often where people are, especially by the time they're ready to go through something like the Rocksteady program or the Beautiful Balance program. It's essentially living with daily dread. So do you want to talk through what made you commit to this, online journey, after being told by so many people there's nothing you can do? Sounds like you connected well with the podcast and it just felt like really good timing for you. But what was that then, the journey of opening up your heart to the new possibility, to learning about neuroplasticity? Do you want to talk a little bit about your recovery and healing? And the other question people often email me is, how long did it take you? Like, obviously everyone's different, but how long did it take you to feel the benefit and start to go, oh my God, I'm really not dizzy anymore. I'm having whole days of no dizziness. Do you remember the rough timeline?
Yeah. So I think what was helpful is that initially in listening to those podcasts, you so accurately described what I was experiencing, which I hadn't had anybody kind of mirror that back to me. So that was comforting. I think that, finally thinking that not the PPPD, but the triple
D.
It just, I think it gave me a word for what I had experienced, which was helpful, because it's better than just feeling like, okay, I'm nuts and nobody believes me. Nobody can see what's going on in my head on a daily basis. So that was huge. And then I think I have always tried to approach my health holistically. But there was a piece, I guess, missing between my mind and my body connection. And a lot of the things that I listened to with you resonated, that somehow I wasn't allowing those two to connect. And so there was something that just kind of triggered an aha moment. And that, I think that's the piece I'm missing. And clearly nobody outside of me is giving me the answers I need. And I really searched and searched and searched. And I was wasting so much time. That was a big thing too. At the time that I found you, I was doing 2 to 3 appointments a week, which were each 45 minutes away. And so I felt like all I was doing was driving to these appointments, doing the appointment, coming home, waiting for the next one. And it was time and money that I was really sick of spending. So that was huge. Those were kind of the initial things, I think. I started with free, so I listened to lots of podcasts. Then I did the free 7-day. And I think the neuroplasticity workshop, the hour-long explanation of that, finally made me think, oh, well, that makes sense. I had this kind of traumatic event where I woke up and everything was crazy. And I dealt with a lot of anxiety. I've been on anti-anxiety meds too. And so the whole idea that I had somehow, my body had hardwired, my brain had hardwired in this fight or flight reaction really resonated with me. That piece. Yeah.
And so
you go. Sorry, I was just going to say, from there, then I was like, well, she knows what she's talking about. So I talked to my husband, and even though I still felt like it was a little crazy, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this package for my birthday. It was my birthday last year around this time. And so I got the package, and then I was just so impressed with Rocksteady and was excited about what I was learning. And then, but I felt like there were a couple issues in my past that would hold me back, and I just wanted help with. And you offered that help, and I was like, it's either all or nothing. Like, I'm going to do this, give it 100% chance of working, or I'm not. So, yeah.
So do you remember, like, it's just been so beautiful watching you heal, and and from an outsider's perspective, I think you really had that slow and steady approach to recovery, and managing 5 children as well. Really, it's such a credit to you. But do you remember how much time a day you could squeeze in for your Rocksteady daily practice? And just coming back to that question, do you remember how many weeks down the track it was? Because I remember it was in one of our early sessions. It might have been like session 4 or something. you were just like, it's not there anymore. Like I'm having whole days without dizziness. Do you remember roughly how long that was for you? So how many minutes a day you were practicing, and then how long until you really felt like, oh my God, it's working?
Yeah. So I had kind of been in a routine of doing the vestibular exercises before you, like 2 to 3 times a day. So I would say I continued that of doing rock steady 2 to 3 times a day. 3 was always my goal of like 5 minutes each.
Okay, great.
And part of it was once I started, especially doing the body scans and the standing ones with my eyes closed in particular, calmed my nervous system so much and helped me find my center that I almost looked forward to the next time I could get to do it because it would be so rewarding. And I would say it was around week 2 where I really felt like, oh my goodness, something's different here. Something feels different. But I had gotten my hopes up in the past where I'd, done things for a little bit and thought, okay, this is working, I'm getting better. And then it would all come back. So I kind of reserved that excitement. And it was probably around week 4 where I thought, no, this is really different this time. And this is sticking. And instead of me feeling like it was coming from the outside, I felt like I had more control over the situation. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so if you could explain to somebody who's not sure about neuroplasticity, and I think it can get, and it is confusing, let's face it, there's not much information out there. There's very few practitioners teaching in this. And so a lot of people will end up doing the vestibular physiotherapy thing or eye exercises, and they're stuck on this generic route of doing a generic program and potentially doing far too much of it for far too long and really depleting their trust in themselves, trust in the healing process, and exhausting their own reserves. So to contrast that kind of generic physical exercise program to neuroplasticity, which is much more of like the body scanning, looking at desired feelings, looking at firing neurons that make you feel the way you want to feel. Do you want to talk through the difference between those two processes, because you've actually tried both?
Yeah. It's that difference. It's that difference that was huge, but yet so small. I don't know how to describe it other than a lot of the balance exercises that you have in module 1 are things I had done a million times. And so part of me was like, okay, I've done this. And I kind of feel like I kind of felt like a trick pony or something. I was like, I can do these things, but I don't feel any better. And the big thing for me was the phrase somewhere in there where you talked about finding your steadiness.
Yeah.
Totally. What I recognized was I was doing all these vestibular exercises and vision therapy as well with the goal of making myself feel dizzy. And then like I was looking for the dizziness, I was ingraining it over and over again. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, I have to, it was just the smallest shift. But once I did that, I was like, I am steady. What am I,
Yeah.
My mind may think I'm moving around, but I'm steady. I'm standing here. I'm still. And so that was the huge shift for me. It was just this amazing thing.
Thank you so much for explaining that, because a lot of physiotherapists are trained to tell people, you've got to elicit the dizziness in order to overcome it. And for some types of vestibular conditions, that's true, right? But not for triple PD and not for vestibular migraine and not really for chronic dizziness. It's more for acute labyrinthitis or neuronitis.
Sure.
So a lot of people are told, like, you got to push through the dizziness, you got to spin around, you got to do this, and you got to feel dizzy, and, play hard or don't play at all, kind of. And when it comes to neuroplasticity, that's all thrown out the window. Like in neuroplasticity, it's so important that you feel loved, you feel spacious, you feel relaxed, you feel accepted as you are, no judgment. So like you really want to be in this place of safety. And if I go back to the analogy of learning the piano, if someone's like, play the piano until your fingers bleed, play hard, you've got to feel the pain. Like you're not going to learn anything. Or if someone has a gun to your head while you're trying to play the piano, you're not going to be able to, you'll be like terrified to touch a note, right? But if someone's beside you saying, this is wonderful, make any sound at all, just, play with it, take your time, go slow, rest as much as you want. If you're getting all of that messaging that's like, this is safe, you'll never be judged, you can't go wrong, you're much more likely to learn.
Yeah.
And to try. And so neuroplasticity needs to be in a place of loving kindness, relaxation, and safety, first of all. So the fight, flight, freeze aspects of our nervous system and our psychology need to really be under control. And so that's where shifting it from finding dizziness, analyzing dizziness, triggering dizziness, and making that the pure goal to get rid of dizziness, or tinnitus for that matter, just throwing all of that out the window and then suddenly going, actually, I don't want to focus on my symptoms anymore. I want to focus on my desired feelings, which in Rock Steady, we say, let's focus on steadiness.
Yes.
And when we focus in on steadiness, regardless of whether we're sitting, standing, balancing, bending, whatever, that's when the neural networks of steadiness can all fire in synchrony and strengthen. And suddenly it's like, oh, I'm steady quite often now. Because we've taught those neural networks how to stay constantly active instead of always going back to the loop of dizziness.
Right.
So that's when the neuroplasticity kicks in. It's very much an emotional retraining, almost more so than physical.
Well, yeah, and I think the idea of feeling safe was something I had lost. I mean, I really had lost, and I felt unsafe. I felt like my body was betraying me, and and that idea of fight, flight, or
freeze.
Whatever. Freeze. I always fly. Was such a part of what had, I don't know. It's something I was very aware of, but I didn't know how to stop it. I just thought, okay, I'm that way. That's just how I am, and there's no.
Yeah.
And so I lived in this constant state of like physical anxiety as well as emotional, but just didn't trust.
Yeah. And it's all connected. And one of the most important ingredients for healing is learning to believe in your body and trust your body to do what it's born to do, which is to be natural and healthy and balanced. And I said this a bunch of times, but one of my favorite lectures when I was in my master's degree at the University of Melbourne was from Dr. Joanne Enticott, who was giving us the vestibular lectures. And she said, your brain doesn't like being dizzy. It's seeking balance. It's always seeking a neural firing system that feels homeostatic and feels in harmony. And so your brain and your body are on your team, and they're always searching for the best algorithm or the best pattern, the best, right?
Yeah.
And if we're constantly saying to our brain, but what about the tinnitus? But what about the dizziness? But is it this today? Is it that today? What level is it? What if I do this, will it happen? We're actually telling the brain to always come back to the symptoms. And so the symptom firing patterns are really front and center. And so there is this mind, body, heart interconnect, where for healing, we've got to trust the process, trust our body, but also get access to our truth and in our heart and in our soul and in our spirit and in our faith. What am I really lacking in my life? What's missing? Because I've said this to a bunch of clients recently. When we have a passion project that we're just in love with, you lay in bed at night, like visualizing it, dreaming it up, like you can't take your mind off it. You're like obsessed with this passion. And an example of that recently is I've been playing Celtic music on my violin, and I will literally go to bed at night with music in my brain and can see my fingers moving, and like there's no space to think about pains and symptoms because there's the passion project is so loud. And that's where another piece of long-term recovery comes in, because we can all slip into old habits, and you will have probably felt that at some point over the last 8 months. You have kind of like a regression day.
Yeah.
And then we've got to tap back into, okay, where are my priorities? Where am I going? How am I choosing to live my life? And that's kind of part of that spiritual growth. Do you want to speak to that a bit about, reconnecting with nature, being the mother you want to be, all of those things?
Yeah, so many of those things. I mean, I think, first of all, that biggest gift, one of the other big gifts that came out of this was just connecting my brain and my body again, but also just finding that self-compassion that
Yeah.
being the mother of 5 and a wife as well, on top of all my other relationships, I do a lot of caregiving, and I have some kids who have some medical needs too, so it's even kind of above maybe what might be average, but I just hadn't cared for myself. And so that gift of, when we first started meeting and you had me put my hand on my heart, I felt so goofy.
Yeah.
It was just so weird. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if this is for me. But I do that now all the time when I just feel like I need touch, and I had deprived myself of that for so long, and it's so comforting. So that's been huge, is just that kindness to myself. I've also reconnected with the things that I love, and I kind of went through an experimental time. I was a musician as well for 10 years growing up. That's what I studied, and I kind of returned to that some, and that was nice, but that wasn't quite me anymore. And so I just kind of dabbled around in different things and have really gotten into this rhythm of just, yes, being outside is where I am happiest. And I love being outside and exercising, and that's been huge in my recovery. Yeah. And gardening I've taken up, and just, yeah, things that I had given up in my self-care. And I think that's part of, that's at least half of where my disconnection came from. I just didn't even know who I was anymore. And so I'm enjoying myself. I'm enjoying the season of just trying different things. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to have a free Q&A call coming up January 21, maybe January 20 in the States. Mm-hmm. And one of the topics we're going to discuss is this phenomena that you're talking about now, which is when we experience pains, so chronic symptoms, we'll tend to base our life on avoiding things that may trigger it or make it worse. So every decision is based on avoidance, distraction, denial, trying to push through, trying to keep busy, trying to not think about it, trying to buy devices or take medications that will numb the pain, right? So it all becomes about avoiding pain. And we end up living in a fear-based life. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if it rocks your jocks and it works for you. So I'm not judging that process, but what tends to happen is we lose our joy. We disconnect from things that please us. We're no longer saying, hey, I just want to go surfing because it makes me feel joy. We're going, oh no, I can't surf because I might get dizziness, or I don't want to get water in my ears, and that will make my tinnitus worse, right? Yeah. So we start to say, no, I can't go gardening. No, I can't go outside because of the wind in my ears. No, I can't go to the gym because the lights are too bright. No, I can't do this. I can't do that. So a really huge part of the fight, flight, freeze system is actually reconnecting with joy and saying yes to things that bring pleasure and joy, because then you get a different hormonal and neurotransmitter release pattern, which enables neuroplasticity. So contacting joy, pleasure, sexy time, sensuality, all of that, so important for healing. And I think people get far too trapped in the cycle of symptoms, focusing on symptoms, wanting to get rid of symptoms, wanting to eliminate symptoms, wanting to control symptoms, wanting to medicate, suppress, whatever. And it's like, that doesn't work. And so many people have tried that and spent a lot of time and money focusing over in that quadrant, when actually the healing is nowhere near there. It's the polar opposite. It's in joy, it's in pleasure, and it's in discovering, I think, deep down at the bottom of it, who am I? What am I doing on this planet? What's meaningful to me, and how can I reconnect? And I think, as you've discovered, that changes over time, because it may have been viola and piano a decade or so ago, but now it's like I'm into gardening. And so we have to constantly be flexible, because we're actually evolving as a dynamic being. So exciting, really.
It is, yeah.
So for all of you folks out there who are feeling like hopeless, helpless, the whole I've got to live with this forever thing, like, I just challenge you to question that. Never let other people tell you what you're capable of. Like, never let anybody else tell you what you can and can't do. Like, that to me is just the ultimate abuse. Don't listen to anyone telling you about your inner world. You're in control of your inner world. You're the person who decides what you can and can't do and what you do and don't believe in. So really take your power back. And, you know, Dawn's just shared a really beautiful description of having 17 years of trying everything, being told there's nothing that can be done, and really having that aha moment of going, you know what, this is in me, this is my stuff, and I'm going to figure this out. And she went through and did that. And 8 months down the track now, Dawn has 5 children, is back into her daily life. And do you want to speak a little bit maybe about where to from here, like how you may be going to start investing in the next phase of your life and opening up doors of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had 1 or 2 conversations about moving forward, and I'm in this great stage, which Joey, you've been so encouraging, this kind of mid 40s, you know, really different than where I've been before. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out what steps are next. And this process has been huge. My desire is to share and to encourage others. And so I'm just starting to dream about what that might look like. Again, the areas that I'm interested in, and, you know, possibly going to do some schooling or certifications or something. And I don't know, we'll see. I feel like it's just a time of discovery still. You know, what is it? Who am I? And what do I like? And if I don't have the rest of my life to plan out my dizzy days and how I'm gonna I'm gonna keep my kids from having to take care of me every single day because I can't walk, which was my original plan. Now I have this whole world open. So I'm just trying to, just to stay present with where I'm at and decide what the next step looks like.
And it's so amazing that to go from that place of, gosh, all I can do is survive, to I'm thinking of starting a whole career. I've got all this time on my hands now and all these open doors that I can go back to school and I can look at a whole new future. I mean, that's just incredible. So well done.
Thank you.
And, you know, I think for people with triple PD, go gently on your doctors. They are not given much training in this, so they may not even know about the diagnosis, persistent postural perceptual dizziness. It's a complicated condition. It's definitely the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual intersect. It's very unlikely that a simple medication is going to be your long-term solution. And it's very unlikely that simple generic physical exercises are going to be your solution. There undoubtedly will be emotional and spiritual factors at play. And as Dawn described, you know, there is a process you have to go through of kind of fighting your own demons and potentially feeling a bit silly in that process as you reset and rewire your inner system. The Rocksteady process takes you through that in 6 modules. You can do it in 12 weeks, or you keep it for life, so you can keep doing it ongoing. And as Dawn said, sometimes getting that extra private therapy is another way about getting the support and having the one-on-one time to talk or to share an email and share the journey in that way. It just has a different flavor for those of you who want the one-on-one support. So do you have any parting words of wisdom that you want to share with the listeners, Dawn?
Yeah, I think if I could have spoken to myself years ago, I just would have said, just stop and listen a little to yourself. I mean, instead of, you know, Googling so much and like you're saying, the doctors were well-meaning. I don't doubt that, but I was not taking enough responsibility and just listening to myself and being kind to myself. And and so I think I'm just thankful. I'm so thankful to you for giving me space. I really just feel like you were there to hold me in this place and support me. And, you know, on top of all the information you provide, just your presence I just needed someone else to encourage me that, that I could do it and that there was hope. Yeah. So.
Beautiful. To stop and listen. I think that's really beautiful wisdom there from Dawn. So I'm really excited to see, you know, what happens with your future career and how you share some of this beautiful wisdom with the world. So keep us posted on that.
I will. Thank you. Thanks for this community too. I heard so many of you on the live calls, and all of you have been inspiring to me. And I don't know that we'll ever meet in person, but I would call you friends. So thank you.
Yeah. And drop a line in our Facebook group, Rock Steady for Vertigo and Tinnitus. That's free for people to join. It's a non-judgmental community where we talk about healing, not symptoms. If you'd like to check out the free body scan or the free starter kit that Dawn mentioned, jump on my website, seekingbalance.com.au. And if you're ready to actually dive into healing in the step-by-step guided manner, go straight to Rock Steady. And you can also find that at seekingbalance.com.au. And there's applications if you'd like to apply for private therapy with me. Jump online and do that, and I'll get in touch with you. So it's just so beautiful to connect with you. You've been a delight to work with, Dawn. And you know, that feeling of feeling crazy and what's going wrong with me, and then going through that journey of self-compassion, self-kindness, trust, and healing. I mean, you've just described that beautifully, and I've seen it. And the robustness of the human body to repair itself never ceases to amaze me. It's really, the one piece of kind of comment I would give the listeners is never underestimate the power of your body to heal itself. Like, your body is so complex and so miraculous. It is much more powerful than you realize. That's what I'm learning the more people I meet. Yes. So it's a bye for now. I'm Joey Remenyi from seekingbalance.com.au. Thank you so much, Dawn. And I look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. Bye.
Bye, everyone.